Hello guys, and welcome to episode 2 of Cruise Conversations. The topic today for the discussion is getting specified, top considerations from top designers. So I just want to start by saying thank you to you guys for suggesting topics, suggesting speakers. Our job right now as an event organizer is to keep this community together. Unfortunately, we can't be at trade shows and we can't be meeting face to face right now. So we're doing everything we can to keep you guys networking and keep spreading positive messages. So I'm going to hand over to our 3 panelists, speakers today. They're going to introduce themselves and then we're going to jump straight in. We've got about 40 minutes in terms of discussion, and then we're going to get to the live Q&A at the end. Okay, so over to you guys.
Great, thanks Toby. Great to be joined also by Antonio and George and everybody else who's joining us today. I'm David McCarthy. I'm the Marine Development Director at AD Associates. We're a London-based experiential and spatial design company. And my role is pretty multifaceted at AD. With my background, not necessarily directly from design, but coming from cruise operations. I had a 14-year seagoing career. And then was involved with refurbishments and new builds for numerous brands. I bring very much an operational insight into the design agency. And together with the CEO and founder, Chris Finch, and the other directors, very much pivotal at the outset of customer interaction and attracting new business also. But also I have a role internally to spread word around regulations within our industry and deliver training as well, whether that be public health, safety, SOLAS, etc. So as I mentioned, a pretty multifaceted role.
Cool. Welcome.
Hey, I'm George Scammell. I'm Director of Interior Design and Operations for Princess Cruise Lines. I manage the interior design department, both doing internal design as well as managing outsourced design talent. We maintain and renovate the existing fleet of 19 international ships.
Very good.
Okay, hi all, I'm Antonio Di Nenno. I'm the Architect Director of MSC Cruises and the New Building Department. That is the technical office based in London. Actually, well, as MSC, we have 17 ships in our fleet. We just delivered 2 ships, a new build ship last year, and we have still 12 ships in our plan until 2027. So, well, we are busy.
Very good. Excellent. Okay, well, welcome, guys. I think it's worth pointing out to the listeners that where we all are. So, Antonio, you're in London, right?
Yeah.
Based in London?
Yeah, well, we are based in London as a technical office of MSC, and well, I'm living in London. I'm stuck in London for the moment. Because usually we spend time traveling around the shipyards that are not based in London, unfortunately. So.
Yeah. And David?
Yeah, I'm actually down towards the south coast near a town called Winchester. So one of the things, at least being at home now and working from home, is that I don't have to suffer the commute every day, which is a good 3.5 hours probably round trip most days. But yeah, I'm very fortunate also to have a national park on my doorstep. So the single day's exercise tends to be quite a lengthy one.
Yeah. And George?
I'm in Southern California. We're based in Valencia, Santa Clarita, which is Los Angeles County. Although I am very much looking forward to coming to London in December.
That's right. Yeah, that is a shameless plug if I've ever heard one. Okay, so just to bring everyone up to speed, the idea of this episode is really aimed at our community of suppliers. I think it goes without saying that without you guys, without the supply chain, we wouldn't have the shows, we wouldn't have the beautiful looking ships. So we want to try and give you guys some actionable steps on how you, whether you're a new business, a startup, or you're a seasoned supplier to these guys, what you can do to stand out amongst what is a pretty big supply chain for a fairly niche audience, a fairly niche industry. So I think to kick off then, it's worth talking about what our processes are. So you've got, a big design firm, 2 big cruise lines. Talk to me about your process in finding new suppliers. Where do you go to find them? And then how does it work in terms of getting on board a ship? Antonio.
Well, let me say that in our in our situation, so in our business as MSC, everything more or less starts from the designer. So when we engage the external designer to develop the concepts for our new vessels, they suggest and they propose some new suppliers sometimes for us, because we are almost new in the cruise industry, and we have our suppliers. But actually, we are growing fast, and we are engaging more and more suppliers and more architects and consultants. And so we receive from them sometimes new suppliers. So then we start our internal process of inspection, audit, understanding if this supplier can be someone that we can engage for, not only for the new builds, also for the refit, because then when you enter in our let me say in our business, then we can use it for refitting, for offices, for islands. Well, we have so many project terminals, and so let me say that everything starts from the external consultant.
Yeah. And George, what about you? How does it work in terms of you guys finding new suppliers? Where would you typically go? Not another plug for a trade show, but where would you typically go to find, new suppliers that you haven't used before?
Besides London, actually, we're blessed with a lot of existing suppliers, obviously through our histories with the company. But when looking for new suppliers, we're always looking for new suppliers, new products. Technology is changing every day. Suppliers are bringing forth new products. We start internally with our internal team, our interior designers, and the relationships they've cultivated and the past experiences they've worked with. We work very closely with our supply chain. We do go to conferences, but I really think that the key thing is networking. And and I think it's through these kind of conversations, it's these kind of relationships. Recently I was looking for a resource in Japan, reached out to our sister at Costa, and we're able to exchange and get additional contacts in that scenario.
Yeah, and David, what would you add to that in terms, from a designer's point of view? I imagine you get approached by new companies and existing ones. What do you typically do with those those emails or LinkedIn messages that you receive?
Yeah, we do, and I think just to add to something that George touched on, collaborate, and I know that's sometimes an overused word perhaps, but it's something that's very much what we look for. Yes, we have people approach us. It's great when we're able to invite folks, to the studio, do a bit of a lunch and learn session, that sort of thing. Obviously, that's not possible at the moment, but there are ways virtually to share new product and to share new ideas. And I think perhaps bringing in designers on board for some of the vendors and suppliers when they're thinking about new products, or they're testing the waters with something, then we're always very keen to hear. And certainly when we recognise great collaboration, innovation and a shared knowledge pool, then it can only benefit the end user, certainly the owner in that as well, and ultimately the industry. So I think, key thing for me is great collaboration.
Yeah, and so when you look at a new business that comes along, whether you meet them at a trade show or they send you some information, what would you say to a company that's never worked in the cruise industry before? They don't have the certifications to be on board a ship, but you really want to specify them because you think the product is beautiful and it's it would fit. What's the next step for a supplier? What do they need to do, George? You've been in the industry a long time. What's your advice to that sort of company?
You know, a lot of times when we get approached by vendors that want to do work within the industry, you know, we ask that they do their homework first. You know, I think that, you know, there's a lot of people that have invested a lot of money and have a lot of time in developing their programs and meeting our specifications and our needs. And it's very kind of time consuming and difficult for us to handhold them and walk them through those processes. We're very interested in wanting to help, and I'm not to suggest that we wouldn't help them through those processes, but you know, we are always, again, looking for a new product, and I think it's very important. But I think that that it's on the company to understand, you know, what the regulations are, and that their products are meeting those regulations, and specifically IMO, MED, and understanding what those things are, and how to go about getting those items certified so that we can actually certify and utilize those. That there is a process involved with that. It can take time. So I think that company needs to be willing to understand the investments of time and cost to get that product to a certification level that we can actually specify it.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I hear it a lot from companies that, you know, want to meet you guys. They want to network with you guys, but perhaps they've got a product that's been really popular in the hotel business, the land-based designs. They see the cruise industry for, you know, the amount of ships that are on order, and they say, right, I want a slice of the pie, but they haven't actually got to the point where they've got, you know, a product tested yet. It's almost like, you know, what comes first? Do you get the product tested, or do you go to market? Antonio, do you ever handhold? Do you say to a company, we want to use you and we'll help you through this process, or do you prefer they come to you having already invested that time in the product and resource?
It's not so easy to answer. It depends from the product. It's more a case-by-case scenario. Sometimes, I receive 1,000 of email and contact on LinkedIn everywhere, saying, oh, well, I have the best product that you have to try, you have to blah, 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 whatever. But okay, yes. I mean, sometimes if we are really interested into the product because we can see the potential and we can understand that it's easy to certify the product for marine use, okay, maybe we will start to keep in contact with the supplier, understanding what we can do. But for other stuff, I mean, the real thing is that it's better if they do their homework first, understanding from their side if they can, I mean, also afford the certification process, because it's not so easy sometimes, and they need to invest a little bit amount of money or times and everything. So, well, they need to set up also the production lane and everything. So, well, I mean, it depends, basically. But they can try. It's not
Yeah, and David, so you must obviously come into contact with a lot of the suppliers that you specify. Where can they go? Because we're going to have a lot of companies watching this right now that have got, you know, a piece of furniture. They're a textiles company, and they're itching to get involved, but they don't know where to go. There doesn't seem to be, you know, a single source of information. What would you give them as advice? Where would you direct them to?
Yeah, you're very right, and I think that's perhaps part of the issue within the industry generally. I think historically things have been quite insular. You know, people have kept themselves in these little silos and perhaps not shared that wealth of knowledge. But I certainly point people generally towards classification societies like Lloyd's Register, RENA, Bureau Veritas, etc., DNV. They're of course attending great trade shows as well. Things like BCFA here in the UK, NEWH perhaps in the States as well. There are, you know, that wider network. There are specialists, or there are people that are supplying to the industry already within that network. So it's about reaching out further to your existing network, you know, looking at obviously, you know, new networks. But I think the trend here, or the thread, is that yes, folks, you know, do your homework. And in saying that, and in the spirit of collaboration, yeah, absolutely, you know, if we're approached and we need to give some guidance wherever we possibly can, if we certainly see a great product, great enthusiasm, you know, ultimately great service, then we know that it's something that's worth championing. And I think the more and more, that continues, I think it brings more product into and more opportunity and more options into the marketplace.
And that's a great point, because because there are so many regulations in terms of IMOs and all that sort of stuff. Does that limit the amount of products or the amount of options you guys have got for certain products? So Antonio, if there's a textiles company that only has one range that's certified to use on board a ship, how does that limit your ability to use that company?
No, I think that's it's not a problem. It's not a limit, because maybe they have the one that we needed. Because sometimes, in this time we have so many options that maybe it's true that you have a reduced amount of products certified, but maybe you have the specific one that no one has. So if you have a specific product, maybe it's better than having a large range that everyone has. In this case, you have to have the better price. But well, it depends. So I think that it's not a limit to have a small amount of products. Maybe it's a limit for them because they have to support the certification and everything for a small amount of products. But for us, it's not a problem.
And George, would you add anything to that?
I think that we are blessed with a lot of resources. I think compared to maybe 5 years ago, it does continue to get better. I think there's still room for more. We do a lot of new product development, so we do tend to partner with vendors to create what it is that we're looking for in terms of what is the next generation or the evolution of cruise lines and cruise ships and those products. We look to the hospitality industry, but then we're having to modify and to work with those companies to be able to make it fit and work within the requirements of the marine industry. Marine is very different in that respect. Materials, and even now coming into coronavirus, it's opening up a whole new chapter of needs and wants in terms of what we're going to want to be doing to take it to that next level of development.
18 minutes in and we already mentioned the C word. We couldn't help ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting point that we've come to, because there'll be hundreds of people watching this just saying, come on, just get to the point. We want to talk about how we're going to be impacted in terms of the product offerings. And I'm sure that you guys, like us, have been hit by a lot of emails about antimicrobial textiles. Really, what's your thinking on this? Because we're seeing a lot of companies that can supply these products, textiles that are antibacterial, antimicrobial. David, what are you thinking? What's your view on all of this?
It's going to be interesting to see where the owners, where the brands, actually take this themselves as well. How far do we actually want to go in terms of this sort of product? And what asset management principles, are applied to these things actually moving forward, because there's a lot of this product out there already before, COVID-19 turned up, and it was a choice whether to take, that sort of product. I think some of that product was limiting, perhaps in terms of its scale, its range of options, certainly when it perhaps got down to some fabrics, perhaps. But yeah, it will be interesting to see if those aspects, along with changes to the spatial layouts of vessels and more practices that are introduced on board the ships. Despite the unfortunate attention, I think that the industry, in many respects, very unfairly has garnered. There are industry that is so well regulated already, has significant processes and procedures in place to keep vessels, health and safety is absolute paramount. And when choosing materials, spatially, as well as the softer things as well, it's about longevity. It's about, yes, of course, how it look and feel, how it will stack up in terms of its cleaning and its robustness. So all of these things, what I'm trying to say, I think, is that most of these things were already considerations. Of course, it's very topical and it's relevant that these antibacterial, all these elements, are starting to be introduced now, and people are talking about them, which is good. But it's how they ultimately, I think, will get applied.
On that topic, then, Antonio, obviously you've got a lot of ships. Well, two new ships last year, was it? Is that right?
Ship last year, yes.
Yeah. So you guys must be looking at where the future of these materials is going. I mean, what's your thoughts on these types of textiles?
Yeah, I mean, as David already said, well, in a way, nothing is new. I mean, it's something that's already exists since many years. It's just limited in terms of range of selection and colors and so on. I mean, as MSC, as a company, we already use some of them in specific area. I mean, we have some internal policy. So, for example, in our buffet Lido restaurant, we use just textiles that are antibacterial, that can be easy cleanable. We have no carpet, so we have just our floor. When we have vinyl, we have the antibacterial vinyl, so even in the floor. I mean, it's something already in place. Then, according to what is happening around the world, I mean, I think that first of all, we need to wait a little bit more because it's too early, because we need to understand what is something that, I mean, it will stay in place maybe for a short time, just to contrast in a way the spread of the virus at the moment, and what then will be absorbed from the next rule and regulation. So it will be part of the new design of the vessels, and this means that before to talk about materials, we need to talk about which kind of impact we will have on the public areas itself. So, I mean, maybe we will change everything, and so we don't need more the material that we have today, because we need to think about in a different way the full space. But anyway, it's something that that we have already, that we know already. So we are more than open to discuss about it, to select about it. We hope that maybe this can help in a way, the fact that we can have more a full range of products, so not just a few colors and a few finishing, but well, that's it.
Yeah, and George, what would you add to that? I mean, you've worked on some huge refurbishment projects. What's your thinking on this?
As professional interior designers, it is our first priority to always to protect and keep our guests and crew safe and healthy. And we have always been looking at, in terms of, we already are at a very high standard. Marine design is already at a very high standard. Cleanability, maintenance, just the different, as we talked earlier, the regulations. So it's, how do we take that to the next level, and what does that mean? We are constantly looking at it's almost the hospitality designer, is becoming more of a healthcare designer in terms of understanding and knowing what these things mean. We throw a lot of these terminologies around, but do we really know what they mean and what that is and how does that work? And I think it's really important in terms of selecting materials and products that we do continue to improve them in terms of the both the antimicrobial as well as sustainability. I think both have a lot of opportunity. Both are very hard to accomplish because of the IMO requirements and the NED requirements. So I think that is an area of concentration for my team and focus as we continue to evolve, develop, work with vendors, and continue to develop new products that's going to help to continue to battle these kinds of types of things, regardless of what happens with COVID-19 or not.
Yeah, and that's an interesting, that leads us on to the public spaces that Antonio was mentioning. So, there's been a lot of activity on social media, on LinkedIn, about how, restaurants could be impacted by social distancing, what's your thinking on how, in the short term at least, the restaurants could even be impacted on a cruise ship? George?
We are studying those now. We are doing floor plans, and we're looking at, what does that mean in the interim? Of course, we don't know where this is going to go. As Antonio said, it's still very young in terms of where are we, what are we doing. However, we are, looking what does 25% capacity look like? What's 50% capacity look like? Obviously, this is all driven by operations, guest operations, food and beverage, in terms of how they want to operate, and then we're coming in and supporting them in terms of what does that look like, how does that function, what is the, looking at guest behaviors and traffic flows. Do we end up going to multiple seatings? What is that? What does that intake look like? So we are looking at that. We're reviewing that, but it's all sort of a discussion right now, and a lot of opinion. As we continue to work through this. Still somewhat kind of a young disease.
Yeah, and David, so as a designer, as a design firm that also looks at the sort of the passenger flow, as we say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about how, from the moment you get to the terminal, the whole design will actually impact the way in which a passenger moves around the ship, eats, drinks, gambles? How's that? What do you think about that?
Yeah, very much so. I think we've seen, obviously, over the last few years, a lot of innovation, a lot of technology used to swiffen the embarkation process, for instance. So making those touch points along the way as frictionless as possible, getting people on board vessels and they're able to go about, enjoying the ship and the services it has to offer. I think when in the past and today, when we continue to look at those touch points on a guest's journey, we'll be thinking also about where there are unnecessary touch points, the physical touch points that perhaps could now be removed or should be removed. Obviously bearing in mind safety, of course, but are there some instances where previously there were certain aspects in place that we could now introduce automatic doors, for instance, or design the flow in such a way that you avoid the need for additional doors and so forth, or physical touch points. But I think also we will see spaces and their ratios come down. I think there'll be redesigns of some spaces. Interesting, George mentions going back to fixed dining, fixed seating, as we used to call it when I was at sea, and there may be a period of that's introduced.
Yeah,
it remains to be seen.
And Antonio, we've all seen that your latest ship is lots of technology on board. Would you say that the technology aspect is impacting the way you guys can design the ship? David mentioned, contactless doors and contactless payments. I mean, is that impacting what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I think that technology needs to help this situation in order to move faster, to find an easy way to solve some problems, like doors, like automatic check-in, check-out. So reducing the connection with other people, with the security team and everything. So it should be as smooth as possible, the embarkation process and the disembarkation. So yes, definitely the technology will help. Of course,
Yeah. Okay. Well, so moving on to another sort of area of the interiors business, which is a huge part of not only our shows, but I'm sure you guys have got a lot of suppliers in the flooring business. So whether that's carpets, hard flooring, tiles. I mean, how do you guys how do you differentiate between different flooring companies if you're doing a public space? What's your top considerations, George, when looking for flooring companies?
We work very closely with supply chain, and we actually put out specifications to bid. So we bid multiple companies within our industries that have the experience and the capabilities, and we've put together a program, and we work within those programs. That program is revisited every 2 years. The intent is to be able to create volume, therefore reducing costs and consistencies as well. So just one example of how we work with them.
So you'd have multiple companies that you'd be sort of that are approved by you, your company, that can all bid on the same project.
Right. So we'll look at the corporation. We may look at 10 carpet manufacturers that are creating X misters. We'll put together our standard specifications. We'll put that to bid, and then based on dollars, we put together a program, 4 or 5 companies that are our go-tos in terms of new product development. Not to say that we don't work with other vendors, depending on what that need is. But when we start looking at Axminster carpet, that's a huge asset, probably the largest asset, within the ship, and that's something that we're able to leverage in cost and volume.
Okay. And Antonio, on the topic of the flooring, then, what's MSC's sort of top considerations when it comes to finding a flooring company? Would you say, cost, lead time, being flame retardant? I mean, what's your sort of go-to measures?
Well, price, of course. I mean, but continuity of on the market is one of the topic that we really consider, because I mean, when you select usually a ceramic tile, I mean, and after 6 months it's out of the stock, out of the market. So I mean, when you have to do the first refitting or the first refurbishment of the ship after 5 years, you cannot find it, so you have to replace everything. So this is one of the key points sometimes. Then talking about floor, I mean, we are a family company, and the family is really involved in all the decision, in all the selection of the material. Our owner, Madame Aponte, she pick and select each kind of floor on the ship. She loves marble, as you probably know from our ships. We have marble everywhere, and so I mean, well. In this case, it's a different process, because we need to deal with the caves and everything. But it's from one side, it's more easy because marble is timeless, so we can find it even after 10 years. But of course, I mean, in terms of flooring, yes, one of the key points is the continuity on the market, the price, the quality. And as we discussed before, the selection, I mean, the range of products. Now that I know that I tell you before that we love marble in a way, but now for many reasons we're trying to remove marble and replacing it with ceramic tile marble effect. But at the moment it's easy to find the normal marble that you can find everywhere, so white and black, so that the common one. But when you try to find the more specific ones, so the green, the blue, the red, it's not so easy. So if there is someone in this conference that wants to suggest some products, well, we are more.
There you go. We'll put your mobile number in the comments now. Everyone, you can call him if you've got a product. So David, on the topic of flooring then, so when you look at carpet suppliers, so actually the contract carpet companies, what's the difference between supplying a product that goes maybe outside the elevator, which is obviously going to have a high foot traffic, to somewhere else? I mean, what are you looking for in a supplier based on different locations?
Yeah, it's got to. I mean, I echo everything that Antonio and George have said, but to answer that question, it's got to be fit for purpose. So you've got to have something that is obviously selected, for the area that it's going to be used. Knowing the brand, knowing where you're going to position it, it's the likely footfall, that sort of thing. Yeah, I can only echo in regards to attic stock and having, the ability to, switch on that stock, later on. And those are all the sort of questions that typically we would ask. And ahead of that is it's coming back to that collaboration and together coming up with some great designs that will really hit the mark for the owner, and finally seeing it actually on a ship, and that it's specified correctly. The route that it took to get there was one that was enjoyable, but also made good commercial sense, and also was was going to be something that was welcomed by the ship owners as well, in terms of asset management and being able to control their stock through latter life.
And where does sustainability come into when you look at a supplier? Where is the sustainability sort of being a priority coming from? Is it the cruise owner? Is it the designer? Who is it that's really putting the pressure on to be more sustainable as a supplier? George.
No, I think that's something that design is very interested in, but the brand supports that as well. It's one of our pillars in terms of protecting the planet. And so it's what we tend to fit a very high priority, and something that we do drive on behalf of the brand, on behalf of the company. That is something that's looked up front when we're qualifying and getting to the idea of qualifying vendors. We're looking at obviously their track records, their financial stability, but their abilities to provide their volumes, where they're producing, but the sustainability is a big part of their productions. We do visit their facilities. We do look at their production capabilities. So that is something that we're actually looking at right up front as we're working with them. Others come to us as a sustainability company. We're able to review them and take a look at that and what it is that they're providing, and seeing how that might work with and complement what we're working on.
Yeah. And would you add anything to that, Antonio?
No, man, I'm in line with George. I mean, we really look into the sustainability of the full chain of the product that we buy and we specify.
And when you say sustainability, because it is a huge buzzword at the moment, I mean, I know that everyone's taking it seriously, but it is a word that's thrown around quite a lot. Do you mean in terms of the manufacturing process? What's more important, or not what's more important, but the manufacturing process, or how long the product will last before it needs to be ripped out and used again? I mean, is the product being more robust and hard wearing, or is it actually how you guys are manufacturing that product? George.
It's reducing the carbon footprint is what we're ultimately trying to do. When I think about what is sustainability. So in terms of how you do that, it's going to be a variety of different ways. It could be the way it's being produced. It could be what it's produced by. It could be within the miles. There's a number of different things that even go to just basic LEED certification of products, and in terms of what we're looking at, which all contribute. But I think it is just the idea of contributing to this larger pie. I'm working with a company now that actually works with the vendors and is actually able to put a point system to sustainability in terms of what is that product rating to, looking at a variety of things. It's manufacturing, it's distribution, it's product, it's materials, and then it's also the use, and then it becomes its life cycle. And the idea of cradle to cradle in terms of then, is it recyclable, whether it's made from recyclable materials or it itself can become recyclable. Really just trying to minimize our trash bills.
Yeah. And I was actually talking to a guy, Arkady, who's the owner of a company called Umar, and I imagine he's watching this now. And we all know him. We've all seen him at the show. We were talking about weight and how weight impacts the carbon footprint, because if you've got, let's just say, for example, a bathroom sink that's weighs X, and you can reduce the weight on that across all the cabins, that's going to help the ship use less fuel. So actually now you're looking at the fuel costs based on the weight of the product. I mean, Antonio, is that a factor when it comes to looking at products? Is weight a big thing?
Yeah. I mean, this is what I said before, that we are replacing the marble with the ceramic tiles, because we are reducing the thickness, so we are saving a lot of tons, and so we're saving fuel. So I mean, this is the same with zinc. It's the same with everything. I mean, if we can save not so much, but even just a couple of kilos per cabins, and we think that we have 2,500 cabins. So I mean, it's easy to understand that in terms of tons, we are saving a lot. So yeah, definitely. I mean, weight it's something that we keep under control.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a calculation there somewhere that if you can shave X percentage off the product, if your product's used in, in each cabin, then there's a cost that you can demonstrate, which is, reducing your carbon footprint for the cruise line.
Yeah. That, I mean, it's something that well, the thing that everything that is going on a ship needs to be tracked. So every time that we need to specify something to the yard, we need to specify everything. So the ID card of each product, so the weight and everything. And they send to us the calculation, and they will say, okay, fine. Well, you add a couple of tons, so the ship will will consume more, and you have to pay more. Well, it's a long balance, but anyway, yeah, we have a look into the ways, definitely.
Yeah. So moving the topic over to something that we've discussed briefly before we started this, is the difference in a company supplying the refurbishment market to supplying the new build market. And I think it's important to say, Antonio, you recently, congratulations on the promotion, by the way, but you're now Director of Architecture, right, for MSC, and you work across the new build division, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
And George, you're responsible for the refurbishment division of Princess. David, you'll design for any part of the ship, new build, old, whatever it takes.
Yeah, house like a house. Anyway.
What's the difference in a supplier? So, you've got companies that are looking at the new build market. How can they position themselves to actually supply to that if they're, the refurbishment market's going to take a little bit of time to actually get back up to speed? What's some advice, Antonio, in terms of getting a little bit of a slice of the pie with new build?
Well, I mean, the difference, it depends from the company, but because it depends, I mean, in our company, the difference between a refurbish and new build is basically timeline and budget. I mean, if you can do the same stuff for the new build with for half of the budget in half of the time, you are super good for the refurbish. I mean, so for us, well, when we have different budgets, we have different timelines. So I mean, maybe for a new supplier, new builds, it's a little bit more easier to catch up, to follow. But on the other side, well, when in the refurbishment, on the refurbishment side, sometimes we have more challenging to do, more challenge to do. So I mean, if we can find someone that can do the job in our parameters, it's better. Well, I mean, so it's a balance. It's a different approach.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, in terms of new build, basically, I mean, we have so many products that I mean, there is nothing specific that they have to do. They need just to do their homework, as we said before, and if they have the good product, for sure they will make it.
Yeah, and George, we all know the time pressures that we're under, or you guys are under, not me, when it comes to a dry dock. You not just design but operations. So you're involved in the logistics of moving, getting stuff in the right place at the right time, and then carrying out these huge refurbishment projects in such a short period of time. How is that, in terms, if you're a supplier, what's the one piece of advice you'd give to someone that wants to really focus on refurbishment in terms of how prepared they can be?
Have a proven record and being able to make your deadlines. I think that is what's critical. You touch base on it. It's logistics. It's about having that product there when you need it, when you're ready to go. So for somebody to miss a deadline, you're literally missing the boat. So timeline is very critical in production times, and the reality of what that is and making those deadlines. And that really is just something that's a track record. And those companies that are being able to maintain that consistency and to be able to be dependable in that respect do tend to be considered first.
Yeah, and David, would you add anything to that in terms of, I'm sure you've got a lot of suppliers that you work with. What is it that you really look for in a supplier in terms of being reliable? Is it the fact that you can deliver on time, do what you say you were going to do?
Absolutely, yes. If you make it's an extension of what we promise, to our clients, and you want to know that there's that confidence that if you're going to be specified, that same promise is going to be seen through. And I think that working with great agility, but ultimately being able to meet deadlines, at the end of the day, it all comes actually just down to great customer service, but having that mechanism in place to make sure that you can react quickly to things, and if we're all able to do that, then ultimately the service is there for the owners.
Yeah. So one of the final points before we head to a Q&A is, how can suppliers, that have got this period of I won't say break, but a downtime, how can they future-proof their business? What is it that you would advise them to be doing now that's going to help them when the order book picks back up and we all start, the ships start sailing again? Antonio, what's your advice to a company to future-proof their business?
Well, it's not a question. It's a big stone. Well, they have to be ready. I mean, it's just a phase. We have just put everything on pause, but we didn't stop nothing. So I mean, when we will start, maybe it will be even, well, let me say, craziest than before. So we will need staff with the crazy lead time, because everyone to receive everything, shipping will be crazy, everything will be crazy. So I mean, it's fine that we are relaxing in a way a little bit during this time, but they need to be sure that they are ready, and when we will restart everything, we need to do everything quick.
Be prepared, yeah. And George, just to sort of rephrase the question slightly, what is it you'd like to see from the supply chain at the moment that you've not seen now and pre-COVID? What's the one thing you've been sort of, either a product you've been looking for or something that would change when we resume?
My real big focus has really been sustainability in terms of sustainable products in textiles, specifically, with carpet and with textiles. I think it's difficult. There's a lot of challenges with IMO. So the sustainability is a high priority for us, as well as, just improved. And again, we've been working quite a bit with healthcare providers and with vendors that are providing to the healthcare industry in terms of how does that translate to marine, and what does that look like, and where can we go with the future for that product?
Yeah. And David, would you add anything? What's the thing that you'd like to see? I wouldn't say, well, change, I suppose. What's the positive that you think you can take from all of this?
I think it was mentioned in a previous episode, just this pause, if you like. I mean, for many people, I think for a number, it's also busier than ever, I suspect, as well. But use this opportunity really to innovate, but to share knowledge as well. I think going back to the point right at the beginning of this episode around, doing your homework, and that includes also, getting to know the brands, I think, as well, and where they're positioning vessels, and in doing so, you then understand or come to understand the guest that different brands are attracting as well, and because all those factors should have a bearing on your product and the way that you approach it, and it's certainly how we do.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, cool. Well, look, guys, that's 50 minutes already. That's gone so fast. But I've got some questions here from the audience. Before we do that, actually, sorry, I should have done this halfway through, but we've got a poll that we're gonna do now. So if everyone's watching now, there's gonna be a question on your screen, and the question's gonna be, what do you think is the most important aspect of winning new business in the cruise sector? There's going to be 3 answers. You've got, I think, a few seconds to vote, and then we'll see that data on screen. So I think the answers are pricing, quality of service, and delivering on time. So which would be interesting to see what you guys, many of you which are cruise lines designers and suppliers, what you guys see is the most important thing. So so let's see if we can launch poll. There we go.
Okay.
Wow, that was quick. So we've got the results back already. That's almost too fast. So I'm seeing here that 33% of you said value for money. Interesting. 20% said the quality of the service, and 47% is all about the quality of products. What do you guys, David? What do you think about that?
That's an interesting spread. I think, yeah, the product, without a doubt, has got to have a great quality to it, of course. I don't think we can, look away from the fact that it's also got to be good value for money, and commercially something that's viable. I'm a great fan of that relationships and exceptional service as well. If something goes wrong, actually, sometimes the true mark of the sort of service that you might expect is how things are corrected and improved upon. But I think in terms of being a hard and fast vendor or supplier, you want to get good quality product out there at a decent price, and I'm sure great service comes along with it.
Yeah. Antonio, what would you comment on that?
Well, I can say the quality of the product if the price is aligned to the service that you can receive.
Yeah. George?
Definitely D, all the above. I think it's got to be a combination of all of it. You really are looking at all of it. And I think it depends on what the specification is and what it is that you're looking to do that. I do find a lot of products sometimes tend to be over-engineered for what we really want it to be. We've got to look at terms of what that planned life cycle is. Sometimes we don't want it to last because we want to be able to replace it. So we may not want to pay as much for it because the intent is that it may be something that's trendy intentionally. And we don't necessarily want it to last 20 years. We want to be able to replace it in 6. So I think that it really gets down to what it is that we're looking to do, and it becomes kind of a slide rule, I believe, between all 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, look, guys, I'm going to head to the Q&A now. So the first question is by someone called Gabriella Silvagnoli from Trunk Archive. And this is a question directly to you, George.
All right.
And this is a topic we haven't actually mentioned yet, but what are the best resources you use to find new art for your ships? Do you use Pinterest, galleries, or just online sites? And how can companies distinguish themselves and get in your line of sight for art?
Artwork. So artwork's always pretty tricky because there's a variety of different ways that we pursue that. But I think that intentionally, design, we start with a concept in terms of what is our storyline, in terms of what that supports. And a lot of times, when we do start a new design, we start with that storyline. Artwork becomes more, it's the jewelry to the outfit, so to speak. It helps to really tie it all together. I've designed spaces that was about the artwork. Sometimes the artwork becomes, the accent. We do work with a number of different artwork suppliers as well that helps us get through those concepts. And then, of course, we've got to go through the standard bidding processes with supply chain in terms of the awards and how that would work. So we do it a variety of different ways. But yes, we do work with, I know we do work with our consultants for new build. And then when we're working in terms of individual spaces, we'll work with a variety of different resources.
Okay. And Antonio, would you add anything to where, perhaps an artist or someone that might create sculptures, what would you do? What would you recommend to them to reach out to you or get in front of MSC?
I mean, I'm aligned with what George said, that yeah, basically as MSC we have our art consultant, but it depends from the ship, it depends from the area. Sometimes we start from the artwork and we design the public areas around the artwork. So we have some special cases, but in most cases, well, we have our consultant, and together with our architects and so on, and the family that is really involved in this, we select and we pick the artwork that we need. I mean, so.
Yeah, okay. So the next question actually starts with a bit of a statement, which I'm not sure, I can't, vouch for how true this is, but I'm going to say it anyway, because it's our thing and we can do what we want. So this is from Doreen Hernandez from Artcom. As you may know, most mills are removing FR chemistry from their coated products. This means they no longer meet IMO requirements. Where are you guys currently going to buy from? Overseas mills? ? David, do you know anything about this?
No, that's a new one on me. You mentioned about overseas mills, and I think, without trying to sound political or controversial at all, with a lot of things being specified out in China, will there be, for numerous reasons, not least because of footprint, of availability, and so forth, that actually things are getting specified much more closer to home, here within Europe and the Americas perhaps. So that would be an interesting thing to see as the landscape reforms following COVID.
Yeah. Antonio, would you add anything to that? Do you know anything about this FR removal in mills? I've not heard that yet.
I heard something, but I mean, I'm not worried about it because, well, I'm quite sure that we will find a solution.
Okay, fine. Well, we won't touch on that anymore. The next question is from Elsa from Shores Global. And the question is, with the COVID-19 related new norm, will there be any need for new items on board ships, like space dividers or easy to clean covers, for example? George, you must have thought about this.
Yeah, we've been looking at that. I get quite a bit of materials from suppliers, obviously, and I do take a look at those. I just recently had received some interesting divider panel products that I forwarded on to our casinos team in terms of what that might look like. I still think it's a little premature to talk about and look at what does this mean and where does that go in light of a vaccine or not, and in terms of how what is this new norm. I do think that things will change, something of this kind of an impact, but it always does, with every challenge arises a better product. I don't know if that's the solution. We certainly have added them in some of our space plannings as what seems to kind of be an obvious immediate need. We're seeing them in the grocery stores, we're seeing them in the think tellers, but whether it's something that has longevity or not, it's yet to be seen, I believe.
Yeah. Antonio, would you add to that?
I mean, it's true. We have to wait. It doesn't make sense it's too early to talk about this.
Okay. So the next question is from Paolo Recci from BF SRL. What kind of, and I imagine this is a supplier that, don't hold me to it, but that is looking at the cruise market. What kind of certificates do you recommend for us to look into to supply furniture to the ships? David, just short fire question. What would you recommend to first do, apart from Googling IMO? I would recommend.
yeah, IMO. Look at your competitors as well. Look at those people that are already in the marketplace. Even reach out. All's fair in love and war, but at this time, if you're looking to enter into the market, comes back to that original point. Do your homework, and some of that is about reaching out, to existing vendors within that sector. But yes, IMO certainly, getting in touch, as I mentioned, classification societies, folks like NEWH perhaps, Mared, Wilmark, etc.
Yeah. Okay. The next question is from Evelyn Grau from Carnegie Fabrics. And I think we have touched on this, but we'll still go with it. What is the most important thing for a manufacturer to understand about this unique market to help them create the most suitable product, both from design and performance? So George, what is the most important thing for a manufacturer to understand?
I mean, the obvious is the IMO requirements. I think, as Marine, it's got to be holding up to the high standards that we do hold with that. Because, and when I say high standards, it's just that, there's a lot of, it's got to hold up to seawater, to salt air, a very, very high traffic. We've got, I'd say there's really not a low traffic area within the ship with the number of people we have, with the constant turning of the itineraries, the voyages. What I do find is a lot of companies tend to have a lot of the same things. And I think that what I find is that when a company invests, they're going for mass market. So they tend to go more for what I would consider to be more basics. And a lot of times that becomes filler. And those don't tend to be the things that I'm looking for. I'm tending to looking for something unique, something different. And I think that, to find some type of a collection that does become unique and different and differentiates yourself from your competitors, because there is quite a bit of sea of sameness in terms of a lot of things that we're seeing. Color trends continue to be similar. But I do think that you got to look at your brand too. Each of the brands have their own look, feel that supports what that brand looks like in terms of what that design is. And what it supports. And I think you got to question yourself, is this the right look and feel and falls within that brand? Yeah.
Would you guys add anything to that, David?
I think George has touched on it beautifully. Absolutely, getting to know the brand ultimately, I think is really important.
Yeah. Okay. I think maybe a final question. So this is Stephen Barry from Laufin Bathrooms. A little bit of a plug here. Being a global brand present in over 100 countries, I'd like to know how your procurement procedures go as a global integrated brand purchase or through respective markets where the ships are being refurbished or constructed. That's a good one for you, Antonio.
Cool. Well, so we have to resume the procurement process in an answer. I mean, it depends again, case by case. So in this case, I mean, for this kind of supplier, it's our procurement process follow more or less our specification and our work. So they have a small, let me say, activity to find and to talent scouting some new supplier on or products, but usually they receive inputs from us. So we need to specify the product, we need to receive the product from the architect, the consultant, and so on, and then they start the process to bid, understanding the process, the sustainability of the product, the sustainability of the chain of the supply of the product, and so on. So I mean, they follow us basically. So I mean, they have to go through to the architects and the consultant first.
And George, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, we do too. For renovations, we're purchasing most of everything that we're purchasing, and then we're working through our internal logistics teams in terms of getting that work there. The other angle that we do is we do use turnkey contractors, where we're looking at them to be able to actually purchase all the materials, be able to do the purchasing. They become responsible for the logistics and the implementation of that. So there's a variety of different ways we do that. The idea of, yes, we do know where our dry docks are. We do know where we're going to be working within those time frames. And yes, we have looked at and made selections and recommendations on different materials, contractors, services based on the regions that make good business sense in terms of, where we can reduce costs, as long as we're able to not compromise the specification.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay, guys. Well, just one final question that I feel like we've got to ask just to keep things interesting. Antonio, what's the first drink you're going to order when lockdown is finally eased and you can get yourself out to either Miami or somewhere nice? What's gin tea, David?
Sure, definitely.
I'll flip it around actually, and I'll go for an Aperol Spritz.
George, what are you having?
Aperol Spritz sounds awesome to me.
Yeah?
In the middle of the afternoon.
Like all the way. Okay, guys, I think that sums up everything. Thank you so much for joining us. Just one little announcement that we'd like to make. So I've been working on an idea with Mai Win from Seabourn, who was one of the panelists a few weeks back. And we're going to launch a very fun competition starting from tomorrow, I believe. As you guys can imagine, you're seeing a lot of people with face masks and face coverings on. So we're launching a designer face mask competition. So you can team up with different designers, you can work with fabric companies, you can do whatever you like. The rules will be on our website. But we're going to have a judging panel of cruise execs, and who knows, the winner may even go into production and have them at the show with your logo on. So we've launched the designer face mask competition. An email will be in your inbox by tomorrow. Next week's Cruise Day Tuesday episode is with Derek Barkers, which I'm sure you'll know, formerly design director for YSA Design. We'll see you next week. Thanks again, panelists, for joining us. See you later.
See you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.